Welcome everybody to this short video that we are making to share a really astonishing event. It's an earth-shaking event that affects literally every Texas project that we have. So I'm Anna Myers, I'm the COO at Grow Capitus, and I'm really excited to be here with my business partner and CEO, Neal Bawa, the Mad Scientist of Multifamily. Welcome, Neal.
Thanks, Anna. I think I'm even more excited than you to be here because I think every investor that watches this is going to be beyond excited by what they're hearing.
Absolutely, Neal. But Neal, let's first start by talking about cap rates themselves, okay? What is a cap rate?
Well, a cap rate or capitalization rate is a technical metric, and it allows buyers of multifamily buildings to create an apples to apples comparison between any kind of multifamily building and any other kind of multifamily building. So you can use a cap rate to compare a 50-year-old building to a 5-year-old building. You can use it to compare a building in downtown to one that's 100 miles from downtown. Basically, this is a metric that allows professionals in multifamily to make offers quickly on buildings. And the cap rate is independent of a property. So it's dependent on the city, the state, the neighborhood, and also the state of the local economy, the state of the job market. Just think of the cap rate as a combination of all of the external factors that affect the property's price. And then think of rents and expenses as the internal factors that affect the property's price. And the combination of the internal and external factors determine the final selling price of a property.
Okay, great. Tell me, how is a cap rate expressed?
Well, it's expressed as a percentage. And the lower the cap rate percentage, the higher the price of the property. So for example, before COVID, multifamily cap rates in the US for all properties in all markets taken together were about 5.2%. Newer Class A properties were usually sold lower than that 5.2% average. And old Class C properties were sold for higher than that 5.2% average, with Class B somewhere in the middle. Remember, lower cap rate means higher price.
Yes, got that. I gather that some earth-shaking shifts are taking places in cap rates. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. For decades, the Northeast and the Western US dominated cap rates. The coastal markets, we call them gateway markets, they had the lowest cap rates and the highest prices. So Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Boston, Seattle, all had super low cap rates, usually in the 4 cap range. Now the southern markets, Texas, Georgia, Arizona, Florida, North and South Carolina, they had the high cap rates, usually in the 5%, 6%, even the 7% rate. But that started to change very rapidly a few years ago.
Yes, the rates have been just plummeting in the South and the prices have really gone crazy. But did it change evenly across the board in the Southwest? So in other words, were all cities affected the same way?
Yes, but not at the same rate. So, this is where things get interesting. As you know, I spend a great deal of time staring at numbers. So I started seeing patterns in the numbers in 2018 and 2019. The basic pattern was that some markets were ahead of others in that cap compression price increase cycle, and the other cities would eventually catch up. And I was trying to find correlations between the largest market in a state and the smaller markets in the same state. So I would look at the cap rate, the CBRE cap rate survey twice a year. I would go over all 50 markets, look at the change in the numbers, and slowly patterns started to emerge. And here was the big epiphany. Everyone, including me, were trying to jump onto the hottest market in each state. So Dallas for Texas, Atlanta for Georgia, Raleigh for North Carolina, and so on. But I noticed that the profit potential was actually much stronger in the market that was dead last in a very fast growing state. By dead last, I mean it had the highest cap rate, so the lowest prices. So in Texas, that was San Antonio, not Houston, but San Antonio. It was dead last in the race, but the growth numbers of the city, the demographics were fabulous. So I started studying San Antonio in 2019, and I realized that it actually had tremendous potential for the cap rates to compress.
Okay, Neal. So what did you do with this information?
So 26 months ago, in January 2020, I held a webinar called Real Estate Trends, and thousands of investors attended the webinar. In that webinar, I want to show you what I said about San Antonio. It's about a 30-second clip that I've pulled up.
So it's only underperforming compared to Dallas and Austin and Houston.
Oops, let me just restart this.
My top pick for an underperforming market this year happens to be San Antonio, Texas. So it's only underperforming compared to Dallas and Austin and Houston, the larger Texan markets. But I do think that this market is now finally ready for prime time, and I think it'll do really well over the next 2 to 3 years. San Antonio, Texas. Check it out.
So I had to admit in the video that the San Antonio market was underperforming, and it was true at that time. The analytics though were showing that the cap rates would compress not by a small amount, but by an astonishing amount, a shocking amount. So with our Texas partners, we went all in on San Antonio. We started working on 7 or 8 projects in the city in 2020 and then also in 2021.
So I'm guessing you're going to tell us what's happened to the cap rate in the last 26 months, Neal.
Yeah. So as you know, just so you know, the changes are so humongous that I have to use an example to show you how much of a difference it makes to profit. So last week, the newest CBRE cap rate study came out. You can see it on the screen, and I've actually taken it to the right page. I've highlighted it for you. These
Can you
results.
zoom it up a little bit?
Yeah. Let me see if I can zoom it. Let me make it bigger. Boom. There we go. I'm going to make it bigger here too. All right. So when you look at this, this is like a tsunami that's hit the industry. So CBRE, as the #1 seller in the US of properties, tracks 50 metros in the US. Now, no metro in the US, Anna, had ever hit a cap rate below 3 cap. It was meant to be an unbreachable barrier. So not one metro, not ever. Well, as you can see, 2 metros in this report have now breached the 3 cap barrier. And San Antonio is the lowest cap in the United States. Not Austin, which obviously was the other metro that breached the cap. Houston's doing really, really well as well. But take a look at San Antonio. This is a landmark for our industry because none of these superstar gateway metros are even close. For example, on the right side, you see San Francisco. This is long considered the benchmark, the gold standard. 3.75 cap in the first half of 2021, 3.75 cap in the second half of 2021. So you can see that generally there's a compression in cap rates happening if you look at all of the different cities. But here's what has happened. The US has flipped. None of the gateway metros are not now in the lead. None of the gateway metros are even close to what is happening in San Antonio, what is happening in Austin. It's amazing, Anna.
I agree. It's just mind-blowing. But Neal, I want to make sure people understand, what is the difference between the 3.75 cap in San Francisco and the 2.75 cap in San Antonio?
Right. A lot of people are like, these are just numbers, and what do they actually mean to us? They're gigantic, right? So this on the screen is a sample Texas project. So don't look at the actual numbers, just try to look at the differences. So currently this project we are assuming is selling at an exit cap of 4 cap, okay? A lot of our newer projects in the Ugrove front that are 4 cap, those of you that are part of Botanica South Park, that was actually projected at 4.75 cap exit in Austin. So look at this number in green, that's 4 cap, right? And then look at this number on the right. So, this sample project is assuming that if it sells at 4 cap, then the IRR for investors is a shockingly high 38%. Remember, this is just an example, okay? Now, notice that if I just change one number, I'm not changing rents, I'm not changing expenses, I'm changing a single number. I'm saying my exit cap rate, instead of 4, is now 2.75. And before I hit enter, I want you to take one final look at the IRR on the right and see what happens. From 38 to 63. Nothing else changed in this property, but simply because the cap rate switched, we went from a 38% IRR return to investors to a 63% return. Again, a hypothetical example, but every property in the US, this difference is the same. Every time you lower the cap rate for selling, these kind of extraordinary bombshell increases in profits happen. Now, many of you have already seen these happen in other cities, but 2.75 is an absolute shocker. To me, this is like the record that was never meant to be broken. No city in the US was ever supposed to fall below 3. And I'd guess many years ago, if it was going to happen, it would be somewhere in Texas. And I'm delighted to see that it's San Antonio because, as you know, the largest portion of our portfolio for any city in the United States happens to be in San Antonio. I'm equally delighted to see that the second city in the list is Austin, because it's the second largest city in terms of our portfolio and future portfolio. Phoenix is third in the list, and that's where the third largest portion of our portfolio is. So absolutely delighted. I hope you guys understand just how insanely profitable these trends are for investing in Central Texas.
Thanks, Neal. That was amazing. And it really shows the power of data.
It absolutely does. And years of tracking we're now getting the benefits of doing obsessive tracking of these kinds of trends.
Thanks everybody for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this little short video, and more later. Thanks, Neal.
Thank you.